think one of the first questions we're going to be asking is, whether threat intelligence is actually necessary or attribution is necessary. Does it make any difference if we know who's attacking us?
$10 billion, by far the biggest cyber attack in history.
Within 15 minutes, their entire environment was taken down.
The thing that really amazed me were how many corollaries were being drawn from the military.
I've worked very, very closely with CISOs over the last 2-3 years, and the challenges they face are amazing.
We kind of just touched the surface. There is so much more to this conversation. One of the benefits of threat intelligence is for organizations to be intelligence-led. So they have up-to-date information on what their technology estate is doing in relation to information and cybersecurity. One of those things can relate quite easily back to the NotPetya ransomware attacks in 2016, where people sort of stood up services to take better control of what their organizations were monitoring and how.
Not-Petya or ex-PETA came really on the heels of WannaCry. So WannaCry hit globally about May 2017. It was a ransomware. Obviously it made global media coverage, certainly in the UK, WannaCry, because of its effectiveness of hitting public sector, NHS and local government. So we were still reeling from WannaCry. We were still trying to understand as an industry, as a population, kind of how it got in, what its processes were, how can we defend against it, and then ex-PETA came around.
I'm not sure if you knew about the how NotPetya spread. It spread from Ukraine, attacking a company called Medoc, which is basically the finance accounting software you have to use in Ukraine. Every organised multinational has to use it.
Ex-PETA was utilising the same vulnerabilities for initial intrusion onto a victim's machine, which was used by WannaCry. So what we call internal blue, internal romance vulnerabilities. And that allowed them to gain access, remote code injection, gain access to the user's devices.
Every infected computer carried the same message. If you see this text, it said, your files are no longer accessible because they've been encrypted. The message then demands payment to recover the data.
What ex-PETA was what we thought at the time actually was another ransomware attack. And the reason it's called ex-PETA is because it mirrored in its initial behaviour very closely to a known ransomware family called Petya. And what Petya was a ransomware attack that, rather than encrypting individual files, would encrypt the file table. What essentially that means in layman's terms is if you had a box full of Lego bricks, a standard file-based encryptor would try to deny you access to each individual Lego brick. What Petya was doing was trying to deny you access to the box with all the Lego inside it. It's a lot harder to do. It requires a lot more technical capabilities. It has to work on a very low level, and the success rate is a lot smaller than a file-based encryptor. So we initially thought ex-PETA was something very similar. What it actually turned out is that it did in fact encrypt the files, but it had no method to reverse that encryption. So it became more of a wiper or a destructor. So it was destroying data.
How quickly it took out Merck as pharma and Maersk as a Danish fish shipping. It hit a lot of multinationals around the world. It was collateral damage. That was it. It was basically, they weren't the targeted recipients. It was Ukrainian infrastructure that was targeted recipients. They were collateral damage, but within 15 minutes, their entire environment was taken down. And it was just mind-blowing how quickly it happened because of the way everything's interconnected and works together. So it was eye-opening in terms of something like that, the way that they hacked into a third-party product, a finance accounting software that everybody has to run, and then launched the attack.
And we saw huge, obviously, numbers being spoken about, and some organisations hitting 500 million in losses, and obviously, and we saw Maersk take a lot of the media coverage, but that's less so because they were the most hit, but because the story was so fantastic. They pretty much all their machines were dropping and going black and black and black, and luckily for them, which pretty much saved them, they had 2 servers, backup servers in Africa, and they were having technical issues, those servers, and they were offline. If those servers were online, they would have lost everything. Because those servers are offline, they didn't get infected with NotPetya. They were then flew 2 people separately on separate planes with USB sticks to back up that data. They then had to restore, I think they restored about 40,000 workstations in 10 days. So they did an incredible job of returning themselves back to their business functionality. But they're by no means the most financially damaging victim of NotPetya. Has it changed stuff long term? I think now, what are we, 3 years after the incident? Probably not. I think this year has shown that, I think, quite a lot in the success ratings of ransomware families like Maze. I mean, they're in the media pretty much every week, taking down large organisations like EasyJet and Garmin and Travelex, and these are big organisations that should have large cybersecurity budgets and SOC teams, and they're still successful, and they're still using vulnerabilities to be successful in their intrusion onto the network. So is it addressing the issue? Slowly, but we're not there yet. Certainly not in the UK. I think other regions are a bit more further ahead in threat intelligence and implementation. In the UK, we're still in its infancy for the vast majority of organisations.